Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing a project called Blue Butterfly. I'm excited for this project because there are a lot of steps, but we're teaching different techniques, we're doing layering, and yeah, I think this is a really fun composition, so I think you guys are gonna have a great time. We will be doing this project in 7 steps, and I know that's a lot of steps. Don't be intimidated. It's just because there's a lot going on. So our very first step is we will be painting our background. Our second step is we will be doing the blue wash on our butterfly. Our third step is we will be doing our light value wash on our flowers. Our fourth step, we will be painting the edge of our butterfly and the body. Our fifth step, we'll be doing the medium value on our flowers. Our sixth step, we will finish off those butterfly wings with these thin lines. Our seventh step and our very last step is we will be doing the dark values on our flowers and kind of finishing those up. So there's a lot of back and forth here, but that's okay, you guys can handle it. So settle in, grab a snack, maybe a heat gun because there's some drying time involved, and let's get started. Now, I'm going to go over the supplies, then we'll do our outline, oath, and get to painting. Also, we have Michael working the cameras. I didn't introduce him, sorry.
Hello.
So, the colors that we are using are pine green, honey brown, deep blue, amethyst, which is such a good color, and fuchsia. Oh, I had a lot of water on there. Fuchsia. And these are all from our in-house paint brand called Dandelion Paint Co. So, yes. And we are using 2 paint brushes for this project, around 6 and around 2. These are the Let's Make Art Classic series. You can use whatever brushes you have, but if you're interested in painting some projects with us, I highly recommend these 2 brushes. And the other 2 things that you'll need is I'm taping my paper down using my favorite tape, which is the Holbein soft tape. This is the best tape. And then we're also using a spray bottle actually for our background. Now, if you are a subscriber and subscribe to this box, this will be included in your subscription box. So you got this. It's so great. You guys are gonna have the best time with this. Fill this up with some water because that's how we're gonna do our background, is using this spray bottle. Outline. Tape your outline down. Graphite paper. Open it up. Dark shiny side goes down, face down. Whatever line you make on the outline will be transferred to your watercolor paper, like so. I always like to do a little test and then check and see how dark or how light it is. Now, because watercolor is transparent, you want to try and make sure that your line is as light as possible. You can adjust the lightness and darkness of your lines by adjusting your pressure. So if you're pressing really, really hard, you're going to get a dark line. If you're barely pressing at all, you're going to get a faint line. The other, there are many ways that you guys can transfer outlines onto your paper. This is not the only way. This truly is my favorite method. Some people prefer light boxes. I do not. I just don't really care for them, but you can use them. Some people prefer just making their own light box. You can use that with like your computer screen. Some people you can project, actually. You can use like a little projector onto your, that's what I did in art school because I was working big. So there's many different ways. Find one that works for you. Or you can just like try and draw it. You know what I mean? Like, why not? What do you have to lose? It's a piece of paper. The other thing about outlines is the reason why we include them is because I feel like there's so much joy when it comes to painting. And I think there's also joy in just creating in general. But I don't want drawing or being able to draw stop you from being able to enjoy painting. And being able to draw is a skill. I mean, it takes a lot of time and practice, and it's very valuable to learn that. But for some of us who maybe aren't ready to draw on our own, or that's just not a priority to learn right now, I still want you to have the opportunity to paint and have a good time. And so that's why we include outlines, to make it a little bit easier for you guys. I will say though that if your end goal is to be able to paint whatever you want, no matter what it is, then learning to draw is something that you might want to take the time to do.
What would you say to people who say, but I just can't draw?
Oh, drawing is the same thing as it is with painting, as it is with any skill. It just takes time and practice. That's all it is. And I mean, I guess that goes along with, like, some people feel like they couldn't paint and then they started painting. You know what I mean? Like, I know that there's kind of like this stigma associated with art in general, and especially drawing, that either you have the skill or you don't. You're born with it or you're not, and that's just simply not true. All it takes is time. So if it's something that you're interested in, take the time to do it, and you will improve over time. And it's not totally linear, and it's not always easy, and there are going to be some things that are easier to draw than others. That's the way it goes. That doesn't mean that you can't do this. It just means you have to take the time to do it, and then you'll get there. And frankly, the time passes no matter what. I mean, like, no matter what you do, time goes on. And so if your end goal is to be able to draw, and you're like, oh gosh, that will take years to get to that spot, those years pass anyway. They do. And so if you just take these little steps along the way, just slightly increase the time to it and your skill, then over time, in those 3 years or in the next 5 years or in the next year, you will see improvement. So don't be scared if it's going to take a little bit longer, because frankly, that time goes anyway, you know? All right, I got my outline. We're going to do our oath. If you can raise your right hand.
I have to tell you, before we start, the bell is missing, so I'm going to ding with my mouth.
I can't wait for that. Okay, if you can repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun. Woo, woo, woo!
I wasn't sure what your dink would be, but that was good.
I was trying to be one of those horns, like at a basketball game.
Yeah, yes, I saw it.
Very bad at.
There was one tutorial where we actually used one of those horns in the tutorial.
Really?
Yes. I can't remember which one it was.
But it was loud.
Al had a, what are those called, a foghorn?
Air horn.
Air horn.
Foghorn goes.
That would be so much better. I'm like, look at this, and it's like, wah, wah.
That's my soundtrack wherever I go. Like when I open a door, it just goes.
Okay, let's get to painting. So what we're gonna start with is we're actually gonna start with our spray bottle. And we're gonna do this chunk by chunk, so it is gonna take some time, but it's actually a really, really cool texture. Because you see how we have like this really soft, diffused background, which in photography is called bokeh, by the way. And how we get that is we're using our spray bottle of just water and then dropping in the color and just letting that color move across, okay? But we have to do it section by section, because if we were to spray it all and then go and drop in the color, it would be dry by the time we get to the end, you know what I mean? So we just gotta, okay. Also, grab a paper towel or a cloth if you have one of those tea towels that we offer, that would work too. But basically, I want to kind of block off the area that I don't want to spray. So like the butterfly and the flowers. Okay, so let's get going. And I'm not sure if they'll be able to. So I'm just gonna start by the right hand wing using my paper towel. There we go. I'm just gonna spray a couple sprays. Okay. And then while that is nice and wet, I'm gonna grab my round 6, a little bit of pine green, a little bit of honey brown. And if you want to diffuse the green, you can grab a little bit of fuchsia in there. Diffuse or desaturate. And then we're just going to drop it in. And you'll see that it's going where it's sprayed, which is so cool. The other thing that I want to point out is because we are mixing our colors, it is possible that when you lay the colors down, the colors will slightly separate, as in like maybe we'll see more hints of blue or more hints of yellow or something like that. That is normal, and I actually think that adds, I love it when that happens. And that's how you get like this really soft kind of edge. And then if you want to like spray more, like if you want the background to go out further, I might have to fill this up with more water. You can always do another little spray.
I don't know if I've asked this previously, but have you like ever used like rubbing alcohol as that? Would that work at all?
I haven't tried it, but I heard that it could do some really cool things.
Okay.
But I haven't tried it.
Because it dries a lot quicker, so I don't know what would happen.
Okay. Okay. And so this is the process that we're gonna do, and we're gonna do it kind of chunk by chunk, okay? So this is just gonna take some time. Now a little hint that I want to give you guys too is if you're getting too close to the edge and you're like, my paper towel, like I can't cut it out. What I did is I just blocked off most of it and then just used my paintbrush to go up to the edge if you didn't want to like try and have it be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like perfectly cut or something, you know?
Clean.
Clean. So I'm dropping in the color. I'm letting it move. It's gonna go where it's gonna wanna go. I let it. And then like, for example, like in between the petals here, I'm just gonna use my paintbrush. And I stayed pretty light in my value for this background, but you don't have to. If you want to go a little bit darker, or if some areas you want to be darker, go for it. The only thing that I would give warning to is sometimes when we think about adding darkness, we just like do a drop and like leave it be, and just be aware that you're not making polka dots in the background. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like to add a little bit of dark value here and there. That kind of move. I just love what this does to the background. I love it. I think it's such a fun way, an interesting way to add an edge. Now, for people who are watching this and have purchased the kit, just so you guys know, the spray bottle is not going to be included in this kit, so you can get that separately. Or what you can do is you can just do a similar technique, but just using your paintbrush like so, and working kind of around it. You might not get the same kind of splatter, but it will be a similar idea. So there's some, I know that I'm a fan of making do with, like figuring it out and making do with what you have. You know what I mean? So if you don't sometimes have to have all the bells and whistles, but also they can add really cool things. So it's just up to you. There's different ways. Gosh, that's looking so cool. And we're just gonna repeat this. Now, if you spray closer to your paper, you're going to get a more tight circle. If you spray farther away from your paper, it's going to be a more like all over even spray that goes farther. Gosh, I just love that. Look at that. Do you see that?
Yes, that's awesome.
That's so cool. So anyways, what I was saying about the spray wash, like be aware of like how close or far away you are. All of those things will kind of inform your spray. And then around the head, I'm just going to use my paintbrush. I just love that kind of like really unfinished edge. I love that there's like these dots in here that aren't wet where the spray missed it, and it's just the white of the paper.
You really are kind of achieving that camera-like quality.
Right?
Yeah.
And the thing that's great about this too is we're using a different kind of paper. We're using our own paper, LMA paper, that I like worked with a mill to get made of what like I think would be awesome to have in a watercolor paper that I was struggling to find. And what I like about this paper is that it takes a little bit longer to dry, which is great because then it's easier to get an even smoother wash. So even though we're doing this in chunks, we're not getting as many hard edges because the paper is absorbing that water and like evenly distributing it across. So that's why if it's possible that maybe if we are using like a Canson, we know that Canson tends to bloom a little bit easier, and blooms are hard edges. That's where like within a wash you'll get a really hard edge, which is personally, I think blooms are gorgeous, but it also depends on what it is that I'm trying to paint. And I also am recognizing that maybe for people who are learning to paint, it could be really frustrating getting those hard edges. And I think it's valuable to kind of like let watercolor do what it's supposed to do. But then also like, I want you guys to recognize that the tools that you use are just that, they're tools. And it depends on what you're going for and what you're trying to achieve, and that will inform what tools or supplies that you use. And because we want this background to be soft, like a soft wash, then this paper lends itself to that because of how the paper is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The other cool thing about this paper is if you say the right incantation, it turns into solid gold. I really like that you built that into the paper.
I did build that into the paper, but I'm not going to tell you what the incantation is, so
yeah.
Whoever figures it out gets gold.
Whoever figures it out, also tell us.
It is possible too, and you'll see this in other projects where like instead of using just water and dropping it in, you can put paint in this spray bottle, and you'll see that in other projects that we're doing if you haven't checked those out already. The reason why I'm not doing that is because I noticed that when I sprayed the water first and dropped the paint in, I got a smoother finish, and it was more even and soft and fuzzy, and that's what I wanted. Where when I sprayed the paint directly onto the paper, some of those splatters and those sprays stayed sharp, which is a wonderful thing. Like, that's so cool, but I didn't want that for this painting.
You wanted that 1.4 aperture instead of that, 2.8 f4.
Exactly,
f5, 6, yeah,
exactly. You get it. You guys get it. Michael dropping his photography knowledge on us here.
That's literally all I know. I just memorized those 3 numbers. I was like, someday I'll be able to say these out loud.
And people are going to be like super impressed.
Every night I just recite them. 1.4, 2.8, 4.
What are those 3 numbers? Oh, okay, I got it. And again, you guys can decide where this background goes. If you want it to go all the way to the edge, feel free to make it go all the way to the edge. I'm having it not go all the way to the edge. I wanted it to feel like an uneven finish, as if, I don't know, as if it was just coming forward out of the paper or something, you know?
My tummy's starting to hurt. I've been eating a giant pack of Starburst this whole time, and I'm also 32 now.
Isn't that the pits when you're like, you recognize that you're getting older?
Yeah.
By how your body reacts to, like, I remember the first time I ate like a lot of potato chips in my 30s, and I did not feel good after, and I was just like, oh, what am I doing? And I'm like, wow, my body's old, you know?
My eye opener was Taco Bell.
Really?
Yeah, because as a kid, I could just like literally eat Taco Bell all the time.
Yeah.
And then recently I had Taco Bell 2 days in a row, and I was like, is this death? Am I dying?
Am I alive? Oh, gosh. You guys. I'm so obsessed with this right now. I can't even deal with it. I can't even deal. And you know what's cool? I'm getting undertones of blue. Where? Where is that coming from? I don't know. I didn't mix blue in there. I think it must be pine green. But I love it. Isn't that beautiful?
Totally.
Do you see that?
Yes.
Oh, gosh. Okay, I have a lot of water on my paper. You can see where it's puddling right here, right?
Yes.
So when that happens, I'm just going to actually use my paintbrush and move this water. Or you can just take your paper towel and absorb it. Because we don't want like so much water. We don't want like it to be impossible for us to move on.
Sounds like a T Swift song.
We don't want it to be impossible for us to move on.
Yeah, I don't know. It just sounds like a Taylor Swift lyric. Maybe I listen to too much Taylor Swift with my wife and 2 daughters.
Well, you're in a house full of girls, and we are T Swift fans for sure. So you get your fair share.
Like either that's T Swift or Moana. It's Sarah listens to Moana mostly.
Yeah. It's great music. Okay, the trickiest part is doing the spray in between here because we just got a small area, so good luck. That's all the information I can give you because we're just kind of repeating it. I just did it kind of in the center, and then when I get close to the petals, I'll just use my brush. Petals and stem. I'm so obsessed with this.
What happens if you were to like take the spray bottle and like sharp angle spray the edge of the green like outwards? Would it bring any paint with it, you think?
Like if I were to hold it on its side and spray this way?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
Would it bring any paint with it?
Would it like splatter paint outwards?
Yes. Yes, it would.
That'd be cool.
It would be cool. Sorry, I love this so. I'm thrilled. I'm just thrilled with the textures and everything that I'm getting. Okay. And then like if you want to go along the edge over here and kind of like I really love this kind of really tight fuzzy edge, and I want that more on my left hand side, so I just did another extra little spray here. Get that going. Okay, now what we gotta do is we gotta let this dry. So, let it dry. If you have a heat gun, use a heat gun. Oh, and let me just say really quick, the difference between a heat gun and a hair dryer, I'm sure there's more to it than what I know. But
the name.
There's the name, for one. But with a heat gun, it's not as directional in terms of, like a hair dryer is directional. Like you can feel, like it moves. If you put it against your hair, it moves your hair. A heat gun is evenly diffused and it doesn't push a lot. It just pushes heat. Does that make sense? So then it's great for using with watercolor, because then you can dry your paintings without the risk of it blowing the water or the paint in places that you don't want it to be. But I will say that heat guns are extremely powerful. They are a tool. So don't just stay your heat gun in one spot on a piece of paper. That will burn, probably. I haven't tried it, but I would assume that's what would happen.
You can solder with them. They melt metal.
Yeah, they're for real things. So like just evenly distribute it as you're heating it, and don't just like chill out in one spot, because that is dangerous. Okay. We'll see you back when this dries. Okay, so my background is mostly dry, so I'm ready to move on. I'm gonna start with step 2. We're gonna do our wings wash, and this is where we're gonna use just deep blue. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my round 6, and I'm going to wet the area of the wing. I'm not going all the way to the edge. I'm going like halfway, because I want to make sure there's no white spots, but I also know that I'm going to cover this edge in like a really dark value, so I don't need to like paint the whole thing. But I am going to do some overlap, and then I'm going to drop in the deep blue where it's closest to the body, and then help that move out to the edge. So there is a slight value transition. If you want it to be an even wash, you can be. I just love different values in a painting. So that's why I like to have them when I want, because I'm the artist and I can do that. But you are also the artist. So if you want it to be an even wash, your view of that is just as valid as mine. And then I'm just going to repeat that on all 4 sections of the wings.
Did you hear recently there was hundreds of people who met up, all named Josh, to fight for the name Josh?
To fight for the name Josh?
Yeah, they all brought like foam swords, and they were like, only one person can be named Josh, and so there was like this huge battle of the Joshes.
I did not hear that, but my brother's name is Josh.
I know, I want to ask if he went. Your brother is someone who would have gone to it. A lot of fun pictures came out of that. Anyways, at the end, they crowned the Josh, and now everyone else who
they
went
did
to it
really?
Someone else, yeah.
That is so funny. They're like, my name was Josh, but I didn't win the right to have that name. What about the name Joshua?
All Joshes, yeah.
Okay, so Joshua counts within that. Like if you identify as a Joshua instead of a Josh, you still would have gone to that.
I think so.
Okay.
It just reminded me when you said like, you also are an artist and your opinion is as valid as mine. I wish you would have said, if you have a different opinion, I'll meet you in this field and we'll fight. And the winner has the right opinion.
We'll fight with foam swords. Maybe instead we'll do paintbrushes. And I will be victorious.
People are creative. This one guy taped like a bunch of foam to his fingers so it looked like he had really long foamy fingers, and taped like, or painted the big Josh on his chest, and was like just flailing at people.
That is funny.
You know what kind of butterfly this is?
I have zero idea what kind of butterfly this is. Do you?
Blue McPretty.
Blue McPretty. That, and now is that the scientific term?
No, that's R. Blue McPrettius.
Okay, what about the genus?
Well, that's McPrettius.
Oh, McPrettius is the genus?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember biology class.
I went to, in college, there was this guy named Robert who just loved insects, and he was like a wealth of information. I learned a ton about insects from him. I remember very little of it now because it's been 100 years, but like bugs don't have veins and stuff. Just inside of them is all one goopy pile. And then like them moving their arms and wings around is what pumps it around.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
And like, so it's called hemolymph.
Uh-huh.
It's like their blood and their nutrients and everything. And like it has to move around their shell so it gets reoxygenated, but when they move their legs around, it like pumps to other parts.
So when they're just doing this, that's the circulation to get all those things going.
That's how they circulate.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, they're nuts.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to step 3. We're gonna let that dry before we do anything else with our butterfly, and we're gonna do our lightest value wash on our flowers. Now you can change the color of your flowers into whatever ones you want. I chose to do like a purplish with undertones of pink, but this is your painting, you're the artist, you can change that. I actually think like a really vibrant orange yellow would be beautiful if you, because also orange and blue are complementary colors, so just when those two are like in a painting together, they make each other pop. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little bit of my amethyst and a little bit of my fuchsia and mix that together to get like a light purple, pinky purple. And then I'm gonna add water to it, and I'm just doing this on my palette. And so using this light value wash, I am going to paint my petals, and I'm going to keep it a light value, and we'll go in and add more on top of it. This is just the first layer here. And usually with first washes like this, I work pretty quickly. I'm not being too
Precious.
Precious, as Jesse would say, who's our art journal artist. I'm not being too precious about it. I'm just putting the color down. And maybe you want to add more pink. I mean, even within flowers, even within petals, there is slight variation to color. So if maybe one of the petals you want it to be a little bit more, or one of the flowers maybe is more pink and one of them is more purple, like you guys get to make those decisions. I do want to warn you, like don't go too crazy here and make like a rainbow flower unless you want to. And then you can. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah Loren Cray.
Yes.
That's a blue morpho.
The butterfly?
Yeah, and they can be 8 inches.
Whoa.
Yeah.
My hand is 6.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
Almost real life size on your paper. Isn't that nuts?
That's way bigger than life size on my paper.
That's a baby one.
Oh, okay. I'm like, that's like 4 inches.
That's a Lilliputian blue morpho.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for telling me what kind of butterfly this is.
I mean, I could totally be wrong. I just Googled it. The internet can't lie though, right? Isn't that
Everything you find on the internet is 100% true. Okay, now we're gonna move on to step 4. And I know you're just like, oh my gosh, we're like barely halfway done with this painting. It's gonna go quick. The background truly was the longest and the longest part, so you guys can do this. Okay, now one thing, you're gonna wanna make sure that your butterfly is totally dry before you do this black edge, because if your blue area is wet and we're painting, overlapping it with this really dark value, it's gonna bleed and go everywhere and we won't get that that crispness between the color and the edges. So use a heat gun or go get snacks or take a break. I think we're ready to get back to painting. I'm gonna move to my round 2 brush. And basically what I'm gonna do to make this black color is I'm gonna mix all my values. I mean, all my colors. So I have honey brown and I have blue. I'm just gonna say the colors: purple, pink, green. And look at that. It's black. So great.
magic.
Magic. If you have black paint, would rather just use black paint, feel free to do that. Mixing blacks is always really fun because you get a color richness that doesn't exist with using black. And what I mean by that is in water... Michael, can you calm down with your starbursts?
I'm sorry.
When you're painting with black and with watercolor, if you have a little bit more water or go with a lighter value, it's going to be gray. it's going to lighten to gray. Where when you mix your blacks and you lighten that value a little bit, there is color there, where if it's pure black, it would be lack of color and just be gray. Where this one, it would be grayish, but it would be also a little bit purple or a little bit blue or a little bit green or something like that. Like it would have a color undertone to it, which when you're painting adds richness and fullness and is actually more accurate to what we experience in life, in real life, what our eye sees.
Could you really be like Hacker Woman and use pre-mixed black and just like drop a little bit of red into it to get those undertones?
Oh, sure.
Or does a pre-mixed black just like kind of dominate too much?
You can always add color to a pre-mixed black, so you can do it that way. If that's what you are looking to do, that would work. And I know that there are some like quote unquote purists out there who are like very anti-black and very much like, don't buy black. You know what I mean? And one, that's just not who I am in general as an artist or as a person, where I'm like, you get to use whatever you want. So I guess what I'm saying is do what you feel comfortable doing and don't judge others for what they feel comfortable doing. Everyone's opinion here is just as valid as the next person's. Okay.
So I heard a saying I loved the other day. It said, don't yuck someone's yum.
Oh, I love that. Don't yuck someone's yum. Yeah. Okay, I got my dark value and my area is dry, and I'm gonna go along and follow my outline. Now, if you have lost your outline, maybe the outline's too dark, many different things could happen, just eyeball it. If you need to adjust the size, like let's say that you want to make the edges go out a little bit more than what's in your outline, so then you're covering like any white space, do that. You can adjust this outline. It's not set in stone. It's just a guide for you guys.
Sarah, I don't want you to be mad. I want to publicly apologize about the Starburst.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for publicly
You all heard
apologizing. It. I forgive you.
Oh, good.
I want to publicly apologize. Okay, got my little ruffly edge. I'm calling it a ruffly edge because it looks like a ruffly edge to me. And then I totally lost my outline on this one, so I'm just eyeballing it. And I'm not going to be mad at myself if it looks a little bit wonky.
What do you think a butterfly tastes like?
Tastes?
I bet they're chalky.
I really don't want to think about it or continue this thought.
8-inch butterfly. Wow. It's so funny over there.
I feel like that would be my last, like the last thing I would even consider doing to a butterfly.
Just very lately, a lot of the, I don't know what Google's trying to do to me, but like when you open a new Chrome and there's like news, a lot of them have been like these people experimenting with crickets as protein because they like don't leave a huge environmental mark and they provide a lot of protein. And I just, every time I'm like, I just don't know if I could get behind eating crickets. And then you were painting an insect and I was like, okay, I wonder if we could eat butterflies. And that's where the question came from.
Crickets. Did you ever have those candies that's like a sucker with a cricket or like a bug in it?
I had one with a scorpion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm noticing that on my left bottom wing, I forgot to put the dots in when I traced it. So I'm just kind of adding them now and making them up. And I don't know enough about butterflies, but if I had to guess, I would say that these markings are probably pretty different on each butterfly for the most part. Again, I have no evidence to back that up. That's just a guess.
I base that on nothing.
I base that on nothing, but I'm going to tell you as if it's true, so don't stress about this because, you know, all butterflies are different.
The great internet filter will just change your words to be truth once we upload this.
Perfect. Yes. Oops, sorry, kicked the table. Okay. Last part here. Now I will say we're not there yet, but the last thing we're going to do on this butterfly is put in the veins on the wings, which is very, very thin lines. I have on our beginner series on our YouTube, I go over different techniques and I go over how to do thin lines. So if this is one of your first tutorials painting with us, or if you want a little bit more practice before you try that on your butterfly, go ahead and pause when we get to the point of adding the veins and practice a little bit. The other thing that you can do is use a pen if you don't want to try and get thin lines with a paintbrush, because it does take practice and work. And so if you would rather just use like a micron pen or a Pitt pen, that's an option. And do you know what? There is absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Sarah, this is kind of on topic, kind of not, and I'm just curious. What's a rapidograph pen? Do you know what that is?
I have zero idea what a rapidograph pen is.
They you refill them. My mom had one. They're white. Reminds me of a micron pen.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's
Internet,
really,
chime in.
I'm really embarrassed.
I could just Google it. I'm sorry. I didn't.
I'm just kidding. I don't know everything, and I will never claim to. Okay, now we're gonna also do the body. Now the body, I left pretty vague. They're black. There's different sections. There's a head, and there's like the body, and then like this little section that's a tail. And then I kind of just left some white spaces here and there for the glare off of a shell, a little bit of their body. But I also feel like only part of it would be actually that hard and the other part is fuzzy, right? We're just gonna move on. Paint it black. That's all you gotta do. Paint the body black.
Okay, the internet. It looks like, I think rapidograph pens are just reusable micron pens.
Oh, cool, cool. That's really cool.
They're just constant line width.
Okay, now we're gonna move on to step 5. We're gonna do our medium value on our flowers. So I'm actually gonna keep using my round 2. I'm gonna mix a little bit more amethyst and a little bit more fuchsia together to get this purpley color. I'm gonna add a little bit of water, not as much water as I added when I did my first wash, because I want this to be a darker value. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and where it's kind of coming out from the center, I'm gonna add a little bit of color. Also where it kind of overlaps between the petals, if this petal overlaps this one, then underneath here, there would be a little bit of a darker value to show a shadow. So basically that first layer that we put down of that light purple wash is the highlighted section. So you are gonna wanna keep some of those areas, and I'm focusing on putting my medium values kind of at where it hits the center and along the edges a little bit. Think of when you think of doing this, I want you to think of a petal, and I want you to think about how, depending on the petal, they have little folds almost, and little creases, and they bend. And I want you to think of how soft those are. And whenever there's a slight bend or whenever there's a crease, there would be a little bit of a darker value. So I'm going along kind of more the edges. Now I think of petals kind of rounding like this off of a flower. And because of that, my highlight is going to be in the middle of that petal, because that's where the light is heading, because it's rounding out towards us. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit farther away where it hits the center, it rounds out, so this middle part is hitting more of the light, so that's gonna be the lighter value, and then it kind of rounds away. So we're gonna have a little bit of a value on the bottom. And your petals might have gotten a little bit wonky shaped with the background, depending on where the green went around your petals. And what we'll do when we hit that last step of like the darker values, if we need to go in and reshape some of these petals, we can.
We went to a botanical garden recently.
We did.
And I just get overwhelmed with how pretty plants in like large numbers are.
Yeah. There weren't as many flowers because it's just starting to like spring up, but
we got all the fruit trees though.
We got the trees, all the trees were blooming, and it was just, I think my favorite, I don't know if it was, did you see that one where the flowers, it reminded me of the tree that's in your mom's yard?
Crabapple.
Was that a crabapple tree?
I read the title.
Those were my favorite. And then the tree that smelled so good. What was that?
I don't know. It smelled like jasmine, whatever.
Yeah, it smelled just like jasmine, but jasmine isn't a tree, right?
No, she's a character on Aladdin.
Wow. Okay. Oh my gosh, we haven't done the stems yet. Let's do that. Okay, so the stems of my flowers are just going to be a darker green than the background. So just mix a darker green. If you even want to utilize some of the black we mixed to make that a darker green, you can. I would encourage you using other colors though to add to that richness. And we're not putting too much detail on these stems. It's just showing that they're there and making sure that they're a darker value so they stand out from the background. And I'm using my round 2 for this because I'm in a smaller, working in a smaller area. Okay. Okay. All right, we're almost done. We are on step 6, which is finishing our wings.
It is a jasmine tree.
It is a jasmine tree? Oh, so jasmine is a tree?
There's types of jasmine. That's a tree. It's just called a jasmine tree. I don't know.
Let's plant a jasmine tree in our yard. I mean, it smelled amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I still have this black mixture on my palette. Hopefully your wings are absolutely dry at this point. And then what I'm going to do, what I like to do to make sure I'm getting the thinnest line possible is I pick up paint on my round 2, and then I take my round 2 and I smush it against my palette one way, and then I flip it and I smush it against my palette the other way, and that way it kind of has like made a flat,
like a shovel.
Yeah, like a flat edge. And I actually, water just dropped into my hair, so I got to do it again. Flatten that. There we go. That's a nice thin line. And then I'm just going to follow my outline if I could still see it. If you can't still see it, then you just kind of eyeball it. Now the other thing with thin lines is you will like lift up and have like gaps in these thin lines. That's okay. I would much rather you guys just leave the gaps instead of trying to go back in and fill them, because it is super hard to match line thickness when you're going back over something. The other thing that you can do if you have a really hard time getting lines is you can use a liner paintbrush. Now liner paintbrushes, like round paintbrushes, are thicker on the bottom and narrow in at the top. Like you can see that with my 6 a little bit better, where liners are the same thickness and a little bit longer, so then it's much easier to get an even thin line with it. Where rounds are made this way to be versatile, so you can get thick and thin. Also, you'll see on my wings where it kind of like goes up here. And I'm going to match it to the little veins that I'm painting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you guys want to go a little bit crazy here with the vein detailing, you can. It's up to you. Just remember to keep them pretty thin. If they turn out too thick, then they'll the thickness won't match like the edge and stuff like that. It will feel disproportionate. And if you want to do like a black edge like on the top here, you can, to kind of separate the background from the wing. And I really have lost my outline through my washes, so I truly am just kind of eyeballing it. And then don't forget the little antennas. Try and keep those thin as well. And there's our butterfly.
Beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful?
Love it.
All right, now we're on the very last step here, and we're gonna go in and do the darkest values on our flowers and our flower centers. So I'm gonna mix together more amethyst and fuchsia to get a nice dark purple. And because this is our darkest value, I'm letting it be pretty dark. And then kind of where it's coming out from the center, I'm going to be doing brush strokes. And if you want to like blend some of them out, soften some of them a little bit, you can. If you want to leave them sharp, that's more of a stylistic preference. I'm going to leave that to you guys. And then this is where like the reshaping comes in if you want to do that. So if you're just like, okay, I want this edge of the petal to be a little bit more defined, so I'm going to kind of go in here with the darker value, shape my petal.
Nice.
But don't, you can, and this is also a stylistic preference, you can outline it if you want. You can outline all the petals with the dark value. But what outlining does is it tends to flatten the form a little bit. Now it can be a tool because then it's really easy to figure out the shape of something, the form of something, and where like the edges are. So I'm not like saying never outline, but I'm just saying like be aware of the way you're doing it, where like it is helpful sometimes to have a little bit of an outline. I tend to only do it a little bit here and there and not cross the entire thing. So then I'm not losing all of the form that I made through my different values. And then there are going to be some areas where, as I'm seeing here now as I'm filling this in, there are some white, like right here it's a little bit white, and we can go in and address that in a second. And then I'm just going to give the hint of a yellow center. Since the butterfly is actually like sitting on it, you can't see it. So I'm just going to have it peek through right here at that crest. Okay. And then same thing on this one here, coming out. And then I always like to kind of put in my dark value and then just soften it, just blend it out just a little bit. And then if you kind of want to reshape your petals here, you can. Oh, Oscar? It's been a while, Oscar.
I was just thinking, I kind of miss the sound of garbage trucks rolling on videos.
You can tell that it's not garbage day.
Every day is garbage day somehow.
It feels that way, huh, whenever we choose to film. Okay, and I'm gonna let that, actually before I let that dry, I'm gonna grab honey brown and just on my flower, on the top part, on this left one for the like center, I'm just gonna do a light wash of honey brown at the very top, okay? I'm gonna let that dry for a second, and I'm gonna go in here with my green and kind of just fill in some of these white areas. You can leave them if you want. I don't think that they're super distracting. Like the areas were so small that I don't think it was a big deal. But I just want to show you guys that if you like finish and you notice, oh, there's some white here, you always can go back in and kind of adjust it or color it in, paint it in, I guess I should say. And the areas are so small that it's okay if it, like I'm not too worried about it matching with the background because it's such small areas. But if you have like a thick white border around all of this, then matching it to the background will be a little bit trickier. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take honey brown and a little bit of that black mixture that I had. You can also grab a little bit of fuchsia to make it more brown, like a richer brown. And kind of like on the edge here, I'm going to do these little dots using my round 2.
Beautiful.
And we're done. Wow. I'm so happy with how this turned out.
Yeah, that background is unreal.
Isn't that so fun?
Yeah.
When I was making this box and I was playing with this as a tool to introduce you guys to how it can help you, this is one of my first times using spray bottles actually too. I haven't really used it a lot in my work. And I was blown away by what I could achieve with it. It's so fun. It's so fun. So I'm actually gonna remove my tape because that's the best part, and then we'll be done here. So, I will say that if you guys want your paintings to dry flat, it's better to leave them taped like this for as long as possible. I untape mine right away because I think that's a real fun reveal. But for you guys at home, I've noticed that in my own personal work that if I let the paintings dry completely while still being taped, and I'm saying give it like 48 hours, then they tend to be dry a little bit flatter. Now
sorry, you go.
I was gonna say, like, that doesn't mean that, of course there's gonna be some wave in here. That's how watercolor paper is, really. I mean, like, and you can like take an iron and that kind of thing. But the best chance I've noticed of having a painting be more on the flat side than like a wave is letting it be taped to the table or a hard surface for a long time.
Could you like put a book on it or anything? Or would you risk kind of smearing everything up? Or sticking?
Okay, so what I do actually and I followed a YouTube tutorial for this actually. So what I do when I iron my paintings is when it's dry, I put it inside of a pillowcase, so it's white, and I put it painting side down on an ironing board. And then I take a spray bottle or the steamer on the iron and I steam the back of it and get it wet, and then I iron it.
And that works.
And then after that, I put a book or a hard thing on top of it, so then it will dry flat. And it does work. It doesn't make it a complete flat piece of paper, but I notice that if as flat as I can to get like a scan of it or whatever, then that has worked for me. I will also say too, though, that if there's not a huge, like this actually isn't that wavy. There's some wave, but it's not too bad. If you are framing this and if you put it in a frame, you won't really be able to tell the wave. So that's why I'm just like, it depends on what you're trying to do. It's not necessary for your paintings to be completely flat, especially if you're ending up putting it in a frame, because it'll be smushed between like a mat and glass and all that stuff, so it'll be flat. But here's our project.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yes.
Okay, this was a really long one. You guys are awesome for sticking with me and doing it. I hope you're happy with how it came to be. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. I'm excited to see how you use this spray bottle and the colors, and I just feel like it's a whole new world for you guys of what you can do. Also, I want to call attention to how amazing this paper is that I have these soft washes. And I am getting some blooms, but very minimal. It's not distracting, it's adding to it. Like, look at that. That's so good. I really am so thrilled. So anyways, if you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. If you want to see what other people are making, you can join our Facebook group that's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. And if you're on Instagram, tag us. We want to see it. You can use the hashtag Let's Make Art, or tag us in it at Let's Go Make Art. And Michael, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
You guys are awesome. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.